What if I told you that behind the bright lights, standing ovations, and magazine covers, some of Hollywood's most beloved black stars were heading toward heartbreaking endings? At the very moment they looked untouchable, their lives were quietly slipping away. Some deaths shocked the world overnight. Others came after long battles filled with pressure, pain, and silence. And real stories were left unfinished. These weren't just famous faces. They were sons, daughters, icons, and voices that changed culture forever. So what really happened behind closed doors? Here are 16 of the most tragic deaths of black celebrities in Hollywood. Are you ready for the stories few people truly talk about? 16. Lance Reddick. Lance Reddick's death hit Hollywood hard because it came without warning and cut short a career that was still climbing. He was not just another familiar face, he was a presence. Tall, calm, and commanding, he had a voice that could carry weight even in silence. From intense dramas to big action franchises, he brought depth to every role and made even small scenes feel important. That is why his passing felt so sudden and so unfair. Lance Reddick died unexpectedly at the age of 60. Reports later confirmed that his death was linked to heart and artery disease. There was no long public illness, no farewell tour, no warning signs shared with fans. One day, he was promoting upcoming projects, smiling in interviews, and talking about plans. The next day, the news broke, and the industry froze. It felt unreal because nothing about his public life suggested an ending was near. What makes his death especially tragic is how much he still had ahead of him. He was part of major franchises, respected by co-stars, and admired for his professionalism. Directors trusted him. Audiences believed him. He had reached a stage where his talent was fully recognized, yet his journey was far from finished. Roles continued to line up, and his creative momentum was strong. Beyond the screen, Lance Reddick was known as thoughtful, disciplined, and deeply committed to his craft. He took his work seriously, but never chased cheap fame. That quiet dedication made his loss feel personal, even to people who never met him. His death serves as a harsh reminder that success, respect, and stability do not protect anyone from sudden health issues. In the context of tragic deaths in Hollywood, Lance Reddick's passing stands out because it arrived in silence. No scandals, no chaos. Just a powerful talent gone too soon, leaving behind unfinished stories, unforgettable performances, and a space that cannot be filled. Before you move on, take a quick moment to support the channel. Hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into Hollywood's most powerful and heartbreaking stories. Your support helps keep these stories alive. 15. Heavy D. Heavy D's death felt especially tragic because it came at a moment when his life appeared stable, successful, and grounded. Known to many as the smiling giant of hip-hop, he carried warmth, positivity, and charm into every space he entered. He was not just a rapper, he was an entertainer, an actor, a producer, and a cultural bridge between hip-hop and mainstream Hollywood. His energy felt permanent, which made his sudden passing even harder to process. Heavy D died at the age of 44 after suffering a pulmonary embolism. Just days earlier, he had been active, attending events and working on music. There were no public signs of serious illness, no long hospital stay, and no preparation for what was coming. That sudden shift from life to loss shocked fans and fellow artists alike. One moment he was present, the next he was gone. What makes his death so heartbreaking is the contrast between his image and the reality of how fragile life can be. Heavy D was known for promoting joy, confidence, and unity. His music often felt uplifting rather than destructive, and his personality reflected the same spirit. Behind the scenes, however, he had been dealing with health issues that were not widely known. The condition that took his life can strike quietly, without dramatic warning, which only adds to the tragedy. In Hollywood and music, Heavy D had earned something rare. Respect across generations, Older legends valued him, younger artists admired him. He had successfully transitioned into acting and television, proving he was more than a one-lane talent. His career still had room to grow, and his influence was far from finished. His death serves as a painful reminder that even the most positive, successful figures can be taken suddenly. Heavy D left behind music that still feels alive, performances that still make people smile, and a legacy built on kindness, talent, and authenticity. His absence remains deeply felt in both Hollywood and hip-hop culture. 14. Lamont Bentley. Lamont Bentley's death was one of the most devastating losses of a young black actor whose future held enormous promise. Best known for his role as Hakeem on the hit television series Moesha, he became a familiar face in millions of homes. He represented humor, ambition, and the everyday struggles of a young man trying to find his place. His talent felt natural, effortless, and full of potential. Lamont Bentley died at the age of 31 in a tragic car accident in Los Angeles. Reports confirmed that his vehicle crashed on a freeway and he was ejected from the car. The news spread quickly and stunned fans, especially because he was still so young. At an age when most actors are just beginning to reach their stride, his life was abruptly cut short. What makes his death particularly tragic is how close he was to breaking into even bigger opportunities. While Moesha gave him visibility, those who worked with him believed he had the range and drive to go far beyond television sitcoms. He was actively pursuing new roles, training, and growth within Hollywood. His ambition was clear, and his work ethic was strong. Lamont Bentley also represented hope for many young black actors who saw themselves in his journey. He was relatable, grounded, and unpretentious. His presence on screen felt real, which is why audiences connected to him so deeply. Losing him felt like losing someone familiar, not just a celebrity. In the context of tragic Hollywood deaths, Lamont Bentley's passing stands out because it was sudden, violent, and final. There was no chance for reinvention, no comeback, and no second chapter. Only a life interrupted, a career unfinished, and a reminder of how quickly promise can disappear. 13. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's death is one of the most painful and disturbing tragedies in Hollywood history because it did not come from fame, addiction, or public chaos alone. It came from inside his own home. Known as the Prince of Soul, Marvin Gaye reshaped music with emotion, vulnerability, and honesty. His voice carried pain, love, protest, and spirituality in a way few artists ever matched. Yet behind that legendary sound was a man deeply troubled and slowly unraveling. Marvin Gaye died at the age of 44 after being shot by his own father during a violent family argument. This happened just one day before his birthday. Years of tension, mental health struggles, financial stress, and substance abuse had created a toxic environment inside the household. The conflict reached a breaking point that ended in an unthinkable act. The man who gave the world healing music lost his life in a moment of domestic violence. What makes his death especially tragic is the cruel irony of it all. Marvin Gaye often sang about peace, understanding, and healing. His music asked society hard questions and searched for answers rooted in love and humanity. Yet he could not escape the turmoil in his own personal life. Fame did not protect him. Talent did not save him. Success did not bring peace. At the time of his death, Marvin Gaye was attempting to rebuild himself. He had recently released new music and was slowly stepping back into the spotlight. There was a sense that a second chapter was possible. That hope vanished instantly. Marvin Gaye's death remains one of the darkest moments in Hollywood and music history. It exposed the hidden pain behind greatness and reminded the world that emotional wounds, when left untreated, can become fatal. His voice lives on, but the way his life ended still feels deeply unsettling and profoundly tragic. 12. Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman's death is heartbreaking because it was quiet, lonely, and rooted in long-term emotional pain rather than public scandal. She possessed one of the most powerful and elegant voices of her generation. Her performances were filled with grace, control, and raw feeling. On stage, she appeared confident and commanding. Off stage, she was fighting a battle few people truly understood. Phyllis Hyman died at the age of 45 after taking her own life. She had struggled for years with depression and bipolar disorder, conditions that were rarely discussed openly at the time. Mental health support was limited, especially for Black women in the entertainment industry. Despite her success, awards, and loyal fan base, she often felt overlooked and emotionally exhausted. What makes her death so tragic is the contrast between how she was seen and how she felt. To the public, she was successful, respected, and admired. Behind closed doors, she felt trapped by expectations, pressure, and internal pain. The industry praised her voice, but failed to protect her well-being. She gave everything to her art, yet received little emotional safety in return. Phyllis Hyman was still working, still performing, and still creating music when she died. There was no dramatic downfall or public collapse, just a slow, silent struggle that ended without the support she desperately needed. Her death stands as a painful reminder that talent does not cancel suffering. Phyllis Hyman left behind music filled with emotion and vulnerability, songs that now feel even heavier knowing the pain behind them. Her story remains one of Hollywood's most tragic losses, shaped not by fame itself, but by the loneliness hidden beneath it. 11. DMX. DMX's death felt like the end of a long, painful battle that played out in public, yet still shocked the world when it finally happened. He was raw, explosive, and unforgettable. From the moment his voice hit the airwaves, it carried pain, rage, faith, and honesty in equal measure. DMX was not polished or safe. He was real, and that authenticity made millions connect to him on a deep emotional level. DMX died at the age of 50 after suffering a heart attack triggered by a drug overdose. He spent days on life support before passing away, with fans and fellow artists hoping for a miracle that never came. His death was tragic not only because of how it happened, but because it felt preventable. For years, he openly spoke about his struggles with addiction, trauma, and inner demons. His pain was never hidden, yet overcoming it proved far more difficult than acknowledging it. What makes his death especially heartbreaking is how closely faith and suffering were intertwined in his life. DMX often spoke about God, redemption, and spiritual warfare. His prayers were public, emotional, and sincere. He wanted peace. He wanted freedom. But addiction kept pulling him back into darkness, no matter how hard he tried to escape. Despite his struggles, DMX remained deeply loved. His influence on hip-hop and Hollywood was undeniable. He starred in films, sold millions of records, and inspired an entire generation with his fearless honesty. Even at his lowest points, fans never fully turned away from him. DMX's death stands as one of Hollywood's most tragic losses because it reflects a familiar pattern. A gifted soul fighting visible demons, asking for help through art, and losing the battle in the end. His voice still echoes with pain and truth, reminding the world of how thin the line is between survival and collapse. 10. Robin Harris. Robin Harris's death was tragic because it came just as his star was rising and his future finally felt secure. Known for his sharp wit, commanding stage presence, and fearless humor, he was one of the most respected stand-up comedians of his time. He did not rely on gimmicks. His comedy came from real life, real struggle, and real emotion, which made audiences feel like he was speaking directly to them. Robin Harris died at the age of 36 after suffering a sudden heart attack. His death came without warning, shocking fans and fellow comedians alike. He had been actively working, performing, and building momentum in Hollywood. There was no long illness, no retirement from the spotlight, and no sense that his time was running out. What makes his death especially painful is how close he was to major success. Robin Harris was transitioning from stand-up comedy into acting, earning roles that showcased his range and charisma. Industry insiders believed he was on the verge of becoming a mainstream Hollywood star. His talent was undeniable, and his timing finally felt right. Robin Harris also played a crucial role in shaping future comedians. Many well-known names have credited him as an influence and mentor. His style, confidence, and honesty paved the way for others to step into the spotlight. Losing him meant losing not just a performer, but a guiding force within the comedy world. In the context of tragic deaths in Hollywood, Robin Harris's passing stands out because it interrupted a journey that was just beginning to flourish. His voice was powerful, his presence unforgettable, and his potential enormous. What remains is a sense of unfinished business, a career frozen in motion, and a legacy built on laughter that arrived far too briefly. 9. Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle's death shook Hollywood and the music world because it was violent, public, and deeply symbolic. He was not just a rapper or entrepreneur. He was a voice for growth, ownership, and long-term thinking in a culture often trapped in survival mode. Nipsey represented transformation. He openly spoke about escaping cycles of violence, building wealth, and uplifting his community from the inside out. That is what made his death feel so cruel and heavy. Nipsey Hussle died at the age of 33 after being shot multiple times outside his own clothing store in Los Angeles. The place where he was killed was not random. It was a business he built to invest back into his neighborhood. He was standing on ground meant to represent progress and hope when his life was taken. The tragedy felt almost symbolic, as if the very change he stood for made his loss even more painful. What makes his death especially tragic is how focused he was on the future. Nipsey had moved beyond chasing fame. He was mentoring young people, creating opportunities, and pushing messages of discipline and patience. His music had evolved, and his public image reflected maturity, purpose, and responsibility. Many saw him as a leader, not just an entertainer. Hollywood had begun embracing him as more than a musician. He was involved in documentaries, business ventures, and cultural conversations that reached far beyond music. His influence was expanding rapidly, and his impact was just beginning to fully register. Nipsey Hussle's death remains one of the most tragic losses because it ended a life dedicated to breaking destructive patterns. His story became a reminder that progress does not guarantee protection. His legacy lives on through his message, his work, and the community efforts he started. But the way his life ended continues to feel deeply unfair and painfully unfinished. 8. Bernie Mac. Bernie Mac's death was heartbreaking because it silenced one of Hollywood's most powerful comedic voices far too soon. He was bold, fearless, and unapologetically himself. Whether on stage, on television, or on the big screen, Bernie Mac brought honesty and intensity that made people laugh while still feeling the truth behind every word. His comedy came from lived experience, struggle, and resilience, which made it hit harder and last longer. Bernie Mac died at the age of 50 after complications from pneumonia. For years, he had been battling sarcoidosis, a serious inflammatory disease that weakened his immune system. While he continued working and entertaining audiences, his health struggles were often hidden behind humor and professionalism. When his condition worsened, the public was largely unprepared for how quickly things would turn fatal. What makes his death especially tragic is how much momentum he still had in Hollywood. Bernie Mac had successfully transitioned from stand-up comedy to film and television stardom. He was respected by peers, loved by audiences, and trusted by studios. His range continued to grow, and his performances showed depth beyond comedy alone. Bernie Mac also represented authenticity in an industry that often demands compromise. He refused to soften his voice or dilute his identity. That courage inspired many comedians who came after him. His presence filled the space. When he spoke, people listened. When he performed, he commanded attention. His death left a noticeable silence in Hollywood. There was no replacement for his style, his delivery, or his truth. Bernie Mac's legacy lives on through his work, but the loss remains tragic because he was still evolving, still creating, and still deeply needed at the time his life was cut short. 7. The Notorious B.I.G. The death of the Notorious B.I.G., also known as Biggie Smalls, remains one of the most tragic and unsettling losses in Hollywood and music history. He was more than a rapper. He was a storyteller with rare skill, able to turn street reality into vivid, emotional narratives. His voice was commanding, his lyrics sharp, and his presence undeniable. In a very short time, he reshaped hip-hop and became one of its most influential figures. The Notorious B.I.G. died at the age of 24 after being killed in a drive-by shooting in Los Angeles. The attack happened as he was leaving a music industry event. His vehicle was stopped at a red light when another car pulled alongside and opened fire. He was rushed to the hospital but did not survive. The murder shocked the world and instantly became one of the most infamous unsolved cases in entertainment history. What makes his death especially tragic is how early it came. Biggie had only released one studio album during his lifetime, yet his impact already felt massive. He was on the verge of releasing his second album, which would later become a classic. His career was still unfolding, and his growth as an artist was far from complete. Biggie's death also symbolized a darker era in hip-hop, marked by rivalry, tension, and violence. His loss was not just personal. It felt cultural. Fans mourned not only the man, but the future that was stolen from him. Hollywood and music lost a voice that blended intelligence, honesty, and charisma in a way few ever achieve. The Notorious B.I.G. left behind timeless music, unfinished potential, and a haunting reminder of how quickly greatness can be taken away. 6. Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur's death is one of the most painful and iconic tragedies in Hollywood history because it cut down a figure who represented far more than entertainment. Tupac was a poet, an actor, an activist, and a symbol of raw truth. His words carried anger, hope, compassion, and contradiction. He spoke openly about injustice, trauma, and survival, making his art feel urgent and deeply personal. Tupac Shakur died at the age of 25 after being shot multiple times in Las Vegas. The shooting occurred while he was riding in a car following a high-profile boxing match. He survived for several days in the hospital before succumbing to his injuries. Like Biggie's case, his murder was never officially solved, adding layers of mystery and frustration to an already devastating loss. What makes Tupac's death especially tragic is the depth of his potential. Despite his young age, he had already released multiple successful albums and starred in several films. His acting career was gaining momentum, and many believed he could become a major force in Hollywood beyond music. Tupac lived fast, spoke boldly, and carried emotional weight that went far beyond his years. He was deeply reflective, yet constantly surrounded by chaos. Fame amplified his voice, but also placed him in dangerous situations that eventually cost him his life. His death left a permanent mark on culture. Tupac became a symbol of brilliance interrupted, a reminder of how talent and truth can thrive briefly, then disappear suddenly. His influence continues, but the way his life ended remains one of Hollywood's most tragic stories. 5. Aaliyah. Aaliyah's death remains one of the most devastating tragedies in Hollywood because it ended a life that felt limitless. She was young, graceful, and already operating at a level many artists never reach. As a singer, she had a smooth, futuristic sound that changed the direction of modern music. As an actress, she showed real promise, stepping naturally into major film roles with confidence and depth. Everything about her career suggested a long, powerful future. Aaliyah died at the age of 22 in a plane crash shortly after filming a music video in the Bahamas. The aircraft crashed shortly after takeoff, killing everyone on board. Investigations later revealed that the plane was overloaded and piloted by someone who was not properly certified. The tragedy felt even heavier knowing it was preventable. A simple decision turned fatal, and a rising star was gone in an instant. What makes her death especially tragic is how much she had already accomplished in such a short time. Aaliyah had multiple successful albums, a loyal fan base, and growing respect in Hollywood. She was set to star in major film franchises and was being positioned as both a music and movie icon. Her transition from singer to actress was unfolding smoothly, with critics and audiences responding positively. Beyond fame, Aaliyah represented calm strength and quiet confidence. She did not rely on controversy or chaos. Her presence felt grounded and effortless. That made her loss feel even more painful because nothing about her path suggested danger or self-destruction. Aaliyah's death froze her in time. She never aged, never evolved publicly, never reached the full height of her talent. Hollywood lost a rare combination of beauty, discipline, and originality. Her influence remained strong, but the way her life ended continues to feel shocking, unfair, and deeply tragic. 4. Prince. Prince's death stunned the world because it contradicted everything he represented. He was energetic, creative, disciplined, and fiercely independent. Known for his control over his music and image, Prince appeared untouchable. He was a musical genius who played multiple instruments, wrote countless songs, and constantly reinvented himself. His creativity felt endless, which made his sudden passing almost impossible to process. Prince died at the age of 57 from an accidental overdose involving fentanyl. In the days leading up to his death, there were signs that something was wrong, including emergency medical attention during a flight. Still, the public did not expect the outcome that followed. His death revealed a private struggle with pain management and prescription medication, something few people associated with someone so powerful and controlled. What makes his death especially tragic is how private the struggle was. Prince rarely shared personal pain with the world. He performed through injuries and discomfort, choosing silence over vulnerability. That isolation became dangerous. The substance that ended his life is known for its extreme potency, and even small amounts can be deadly. At the time of his death, Prince was still creating, still performing, and still inspiring. His concerts remained electric, and his fan base spanned generations. There was no sense of decline. He was still very much alive in his art, which made the sudden finality even more jarring. Prince's death exposed a painful truth about fame and privacy. Even the most gifted, disciplined artists can suffer silently. Hollywood lost a once-in-a-lifetime talent, not to excess or spectacle, but to hidden pain that went unnoticed until it was too late. 3. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's death remains one of the most tragic moments in Hollywood history because it marked the loss of a figure whose life had been shaped by fame from childhood. Known as the King of Pop, Michael Jackson was not just an entertainer, he was a global phenomenon. His music, dance, and visual style changed pop culture forever. Yet behind the brilliance was a life filled with pressure, isolation, and relentless scrutiny. Michael Jackson died at the age of 50 from acute drug intoxication caused by prescription medications. The substances were administered while he was preparing for a major comeback tour, one that was meant to restore his place on the world stage. His death was later ruled a homicide, and his personal doctor was convicted for his role in administering the drugs. The circumstances made the tragedy even more disturbing, as the very people meant to protect him failed him. What makes his death especially tragic is the exhaustion that defined his final years. Michael Jackson's body had endured decades of intense performance schedules, surgeries, and sleep deprivation. He struggled with insomnia and relied heavily on medication just to function. Fame had given him everything, yet taken away normalcy, safety, and peace. Despite controversy and constant media pressure, his influence never faded. He remained one of the most recognizable and impactful artists in history. Millions still believed in his talent and awaited his return to the stage. His death canceled that possibility forever. Michael Jackson's passing exposed the darker side of celebrity culture, where performance is prioritized over health and humanity. Hollywood lost not just a star, but a symbol of artistic brilliance, shaped and ultimately consumed by the machine that made him famous. 2. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston's death was tragic because it reflected a slow, public unraveling of one of the greatest voices ever recorded. She was known for her effortless power, flawless control, and emotional depth. At her peak, Whitney Houston seemed unstoppable. Her voice dominated music charts, movie screens, and award stages, making her one of the most successful entertainers of all time. Whitney Houston died at the age of 48 after accidentally drowning in a hotel bathtub. The official reports stated that heart disease and substance use played significant roles in her death. While the final moment was sudden, the path leading there had been long and painful. Her struggles with addiction had been visible for years, turning her personal life into a public spectacle. What makes her death especially tragic is the contrast between who she was and who she became under pressure. Whitney started her career young, surrounded by massive expectations and little protection. Fame magnified every mistake and weakened every boundary. Over time, addiction damaged not only her health, but also her voice, the very gift that defined her. Despite these struggles, her talent never disappeared. Even during difficult performances, glimpses of her greatness remained. Fans continued to hope for a full recovery and a triumphant return. That hope ended abruptly with her death. Whitney Houston's passing stands as a painful reminder that talent alone cannot shield someone from addiction. Hollywood celebrated her voice, but failed to save the woman behind it. What remains is timeless music and the memory of a brilliance that deserved a gentler ending. 1. Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick Boseman's death was tragic because it unfolded in silence, strength, and dignity. Unlike many Hollywood losses marked by chaos or public struggle, his came with revelation. The world learned only after his passing that he had been battling colon cancer for years. Throughout treatments, surgeries, and physical pain, he continued to work, inspire, and lead without ever seeking sympathy. Chadwick Boseman died at the age of 43 after a private, long fight with cancer. During that time, he delivered some of the most powerful performances of his career. He portrayed real-life icons, historical figures, and a groundbreaking superhero who meant everything to millions. While audiences celebrated his success, they had no idea of the strength it took for him to simply show up. What makes his death especially heartbreaking is how selfless his journey was. Chadwick chose to focus on purpose rather than fear. He visited sick children, mentored young actors, and spoke about responsibility and legacy without ever revealing his own struggle. His pain never became his identity. His role as Black Panther carried deep cultural weight. He became a symbol of pride, representation, and hope, especially for Black audiences worldwide. Losing him felt personal, as if something meaningful had been taken too soon. Chadwick Boseman's death represents a different kind of tragedy. A life full of integrity, talent, and quiet courage ended far earlier than it should have. Hollywood lost a rare soul whose impact will long outlive his time. These stories are hard to forget, and maybe they're not meant to be. Behind every tragic ending was a life that mattered, a voice that shaped culture, and a future that was cut short. But the question is this: how many of these stories were you truly aware of before today? And how many more have been lost to silence over the years? If this video made you think, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Which story hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments, and let's talk.